This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.
UConn is the opposite. If
Right.
you look at their cultural impact, it's minimal.
Yeah.
But their actual meat, their actual accomplishment is huge, both during the Calhoun era as well as the now Hurley era. But I said all that to say they've had some great players. Like I got Jesus Shuttlesworth, Ray Allen was great. Rip Hamilton was pretty good. Okafor was okay in college. They've never, other than Ray Allen, they've never really had that guy that was just that dude. They've never had that.
Which school had the best overall collection of individual talent in the history of college basketball? That question has sparked barroom and cookout debates for years. And right now, we will add our 2 cents into the debate. Hello once again, sports fans. This is Dana Augusta, and my co-host Charles Combs will be along shortly. And this is the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast, the podcast that gives you the best of sports from back in the day. In this episode, we will continue our discussion of the best in the history of college basketball. In the previous episode, we determined the starting lineup, a reserve, a coach of the 12 of the most prestigious programs in history. Now, in part 2, we will put together a bracket and forecast a winner in a hypothetical tournament with the 12 teams. Later in the show, we'll put the lineups in AI and have it determine a winner. And after taking a sneak peek at the results, it may be a bit surprising. So stay tuned. We have all of that and more coming up here on the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast, a member of the Sports History Network.
Hey there. Welcome to Music Meets Sports, where sports legends meet custom soundtracks. Founded by music producer Ronald Tyke Oliver, Music Meets Sports was created to bridge generations, educate fans, and celebrate the greatness of both current and former athletes. We craft original songs about heroes in basketball, football, baseball, boxing, and beyond, highlighting their struggles and victories. Across all musical genres, we reintroduce fans to their favorite athletes in a way they've never heard before. From Babe Ruth to Reggie White, from rising WNBA stars to timeless NFL great stream, or download our music now on Apple Music, Amazon, and Spotify. Visit musicmeetsports.org to explore the catalog, hear new releases, and join the movement that's preserving sports history, one song at a time.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're back here on this Historically Speaking Sports Podcast. I'm Dana Augusta along with Charles Combs coming to you on Easter Sunday and the day before the NCAA National Championship game between Michigan and UConn. And we're going to have a couple of championships on our own here on this episode, because this is part 2 of the Historically Speaking Sports Alumni Basketball Tournament that we're going to be putting on here. And this episode is going to entail us putting together, going through our brackets as far as like who we think would win in a hypothetical tournament between 12 of the most prestigious basketball programs in the history of men's college basketball. I'm going to do that. Charles is going to do that, as well as AI will do this also. So we're going to go through our brackets, and then we're going to let AI do its thing, for him to determine, for AI to determine who would be a national champ. So, without further ado, let me introduce my co-host here once again, joining us here on this Easter Sunday. Charles Combs once again joining us. Chuck, what's going on with you? And mainly happy Easter.
And happy Easter to you as well. Nothing, just the usual, So just getting ready, this is something that we've, conceived, always wondered aloud about, and now we fleshed it out to a degree a few weeks back. Now we're about to go ahead and finish the job and put the nail in the coffin tonight and just kind of flesh this all the way out 100%. Looking
Oh,
forward to it.
oh yeah, man, absolutely. And this was, like I said, this was your brainchild. Like I said in the previous episode, that this was going to be, this was something that you conceived of, and I thought it's an outstanding idea. And this may be a very debate-driven episode, I think, because you got your picks, I got my picks, and AI got its picks. So this is going to be something that's going to be very entertaining, to say the least. And just to give everyone out there a little bit of a refresher, we selected 12 programs from the history of college basketball, 12 of the most prestigious college basketball programs in the history of college basketball. And what we did was we put together an all-time team for each of these 12 programs. And we put them up in a 12-team tournament to determine who is the best of the best, the cream of the crop, the creme de la creme, as my favorite rapper Guru would say, the creme de la creme. Now, the 12 teams that we have selected, okay, of course, is UCLA, Kentucky, UConn, North Carolina, Indiana, Kansas, Duke, Michigan State, Syracuse, Georgetown, Arizona, and rounding out the 12 is LSU. Now, before we get into it, I'm going to rattle off the team members of each team. And before we do that, Chuck, let me ask you this: when you went through this and you kind of fleshed out who would win and who would lose in each game, was there certain times that you looked at it and you thought, boy, this is tough? And you just try to play it out in your mind's eye on who you think, just kind of struggle with who would win in certain matchup between certain players.
Um, for the most part, I would say, sorry, I would say probably 80% of this wasn't that difficult.
Okay, I got
But
you.
it's a particular grouping, a particular portion of the bracket that
Mhm.
was very, very difficult. And
Uh-huh.
particularly it was one um first round matchup that I went back and forth on at least 2 dozen times. It
Yeah.
was very, very tough because not only were they evenly matched, but they were also both capable of running deep through the tournament, even
Yeah.
winning it. One team in particular, especially.
Right.
So that what was tough, and then you may have some surprises from me in terms of some things, but I think certain things were pretty clear cut. But that one portion, as I mentioned a moment ago, was really hard.
From my perspective, the first round was, to me, kind of cut and dry. There was one matchup that was patently obvious. Okay, as far as like matchups are concerned. Yet others was like there was one that I was like, wow, this is kind of tough. But the second round, for me, I went back and forth on with one particular matchup 4 or 5 different ways. And I could see either way, either one of you going out any kind of specific way. You know what I mean? It could have been like one way or another way. And it was one of those, just like you said, it was essentially going back and forth about a half dozen times on who would win, that sort of thing. But going all the way through, it was it was at times pretty difficult, to really factor in all of this. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
So yeah, obviously you know what I'm saying when I say that there were certain matchups in this tournament that could have been like, wow, very, very difficult.
Correct. I agree wholeheartedly.
Okay, so to go through the teams, okay, like I said, you at UCLA, the number one pick. the number one seed, I mean. Um, the team is as follows: point guard Gail Goodrich, shooting guard Sidney Wicks, small forward Keith Wilkes, power forward Bill Walton, and center Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, with the reserve being Ed Bannon and the head coach, of course, the Wizard of Westwood, John Wooden. And oh, by the way, shout out to UCLA's women winning the women's national championship earlier this afternoon. Speaking of the Bruins. Number two, Kentucky. Point guard Kyle Macy, shooting guard Tony Delk, small forward Jamal Mashburn, power forward Dan Issel, center Anthony Davis, reserve Jack Goose Givens, and the head coach Adolph Rupp. Number three, UConn. Point guard Kimber Walker, shooting guard Ray Allen, small forward Richard Hamilton, power forward Danielle Marshall, center Emeka Okafor, and the reserve is Ben Gordon with head coach of Jim Calhoun. And if Dan Hurley wins tomorrow night, we may have to change that. Number four, North Carolina. Point guard Phil Ford, shooting guard Michael Jordan, small forward James Worthy, power forward Sam Perkins, center Tyler Hansborough, reserve Bob McAdoo, and head coach Dean Smith. Number five, fifth seed Indiana. Point guard Isaiah Thomas, shooting guard Steve Alford, small forward Scott May, power forward Kent Benson, center Walt Bellamy, and the reserve Calvert Cheney, and the head coach is Robert Montgomery Knight. Number six seed is the Kansas Jayhawks. Point guard JoJo White, shooting guard Paul Pierce, small forward Danny Manning, power forward Rafe LaFrance, center Wilt Chamberlain, and the reserve Clyde Lavellet, and the head coach is Bill Self. Number seven, the Duke Blue Devils. Coach, of course, is Mike Krzyzewski. The point guard is Jay Williams. Shooting guard Johnny Dawkins. Small forward Grant Hill. Power forward Danny Ferry. Center is Christian Leitner. And the reserve is Shane Battier. And like I said, head coach is Mike Krzyzewski. Number eight seed is Michigan State Spartans. Point guard Magic Johnson. Shooting guard Steve Smith. Small forward Morris Peterson. Power forward Greg Kelser, center Draymond Green, reserve is Sean Respert, and the head coach Tom Izzo. And rounding out the group four left, Syracuse at number 9, point guard Pearl Washington, shooting guard Dave Bing, small forward Carmelo Anthony, power forward Derek Coleman, center Ronnie Cycli, reserve Lawrence Moulton, and the head coach Jim Boeheim. The 10th seed, the Georgetown Hoyas. Point guard is Allen Iverson. Shooting guard, Ari Sleepy Floyd. Small forward, Reggie Williams. Power forward, Alonzo Mourning. Center, Patrick Ewing. The reserve is David Wingate. And the head coach, John Thompson. Number 11, the Arizona Wildcats. Point guard, Mike Bibby. Shooting guard, Khalid Reeves. Shooting small forward Jason Terry, power forward Sean Elliott, center Channing Frye, reserve Damon Stoudemire, and head coach Lute Olson. And rounding it out, the 12th seed, the LSU Tigers. Point guard Chris Jackson, shooting guard Pete Maravich, small forward Rudy Macklin, power forward Bob Pettit, center Shaquille O'Neal, the reserve Vernell Singleton, and head coach the incomparable Dale Brown. So that is the teams of this particular tournament. And we started things off the 4 teams in the first round. Before we get started, Chuck, is there anything that you would like to add before we get started tonight on this journey through our brackets here?
No, not really. We just ready to go, but like a lot of things, like a lot of these teams have reputations and things like that through the years, traditional reputations, historic reputations. And since you mentioned that Guru was your favorite rapper, I think it only applies, from I don't know what your favorite Gangstar album was. For me, it was Daily Operation, but I love Step in the Arena as well. And then the Moment of Truth in '98.
Moment of Truth is my favorite album.
Oh wow! Okay.
Well,
I like Daily Operation the best, followed by um um um
Step in the Arena.
Then I like Moment of Truth. Then the very first one that they had with all that. But anyway, on to you remember just to get it real up, you say Brothers are amused by other brothers' reps, but the thing they know best is where the gun is kept. You
Yep.
dig? You
Yep.
know, that's
Yep.
Guru
Yes, sir.
1990, baby. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
These got a lot of dudes, a lot of these guys got a lot of reps. And we probably gonna step on a few toes in terms of said reputations.
That's
So
it.
let's go.
We absolutely. Now, what I did was I took the liberty of doing this. Okay, obviously, the lower seeded teams advance if they win, and they play the higher seeded teams. That's how I decided to do it. Also added to the caveat of where they would be playing. What I did was I tried to kind of figure out where these games would be played based on the midway point between each place where the college is located. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say the teams, the two teams that's playing the matchup, and then where the game is going to be played, and then go through what I think is going to happen. Okay. Starting off the first game from Memphis, Tennessee, from the FedEx Forum in Memphis, LSU playing against Indiana to start the tournament. The game is sort of close for most of it, but LSU, despite Dale Brown, comes through and beats Indiana 77-69. Shaq has his way with Walt Bellamy down low. Shaq 18 points and 17 rebounds. Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf 14 points and 10 assists, and Pete Maravich with 17. Steve Alford with 20 points, and Isaiah Thomas 18 points and 8 assists. Okay, that's game one. LSU beats Indiana 77-69. Now, any debate about that go moving forward?
No debate about that at all. I don't have a debate with that, and I especially love the theme that you used in terms of despite Bill Brown, because that's what I took into account in terms of my assessment of the matchup.
Okay, so LSU defeats Indiana to move on to the next round. Next game here, Kansas, Arizona. This game is never close. Arizona simply has no answer for Wilt Chamberlain down low. Kansas win this one 79-60. Wilt 27 points with 20 rebounds. Danny Manning with 19. By the way, this game takes place in Salt Lake City, Utah at the Delta Center. I wanted to say the Salt Palace, but I don't remember the I don't remember the name of the current Jazz Arena. I was about to say the
Well,
Salt
it used to be
Palace.
the Delta Center
Yeah.
back when they first erected it as the successor to the Salt Palace. But just for sake, shouting out Frank Lade, man, is at the Salt Palace, man, and
Yeah.
we got it at the Salt Palace, man. You know,
Okay. Like I said, Kansas wins 79-60. This game was never really close, in my opinion. There's no answer for Will Chamberlain. Channing Frye going against Will Chamberlain, and then Clyde Lovellette, another very capable big coming off the bench. He also have to contend with Rafe LaFrentz. Arizona's too guard heavy, and that was also evident last night when they played Michigan. Arizona just so guard heavy. Arizona was led by Elliott. Sean Elliott had 22 points, but overall, Kansas win this one going away 79-60 in Salt Lake City.
no dispute.
Next one. This one I kind of had to go back and forth on.
So you and I
Georgetown,
agree.
Georgetown versus Duke. This one was so hard. Okay, this one taking place right in your backyard, College Park, Maryland, at the Cole Fieldhouse, University of Maryland, the site
Okay,
of the 1966 Final Four.
15 minutes from my house.
Georgetown versus Duke. I have Georgetown winning 71-70 on a buzzer beater by Reggie Williams. Ewing 24 points and 13 rebounds. Iverson 19 points and 5 assists. Grant Hill leads Duke with 21 points. Leitner 17 points and 8 rebounds. But Reggie Williams hits the game winner at the buzzer to defeat Mike Krzyzewski in Georgetown.
Okay, we'll see. Let's just leave it at that. We'll see. You know,
The next game to round out the first round, we got Syracuse taking on Michigan State at Quicken Loans Arena in Cleveland. And I have Syracuse winning 74-64. The X factor in this game for Syracuse, Lawrence Moulton. 20 points off the bench for Syracuse, adding to Carmelo Anthony's 24 points to beat Michigan State. Magic controls the tempo for most of the game, but it's the shooting of Moulton and Anthony and the lack of possible offensive firepower for Michigan State down low spelled their doom. And Syracuse wins this with 74-69, in my opinion.
Okay. We shall see on this one too.
Okay. Now we're moving on to the second round. The matchups in the second round are LSU against UCLA, Georgetown versus Kentucky, Syracuse against UConn, and then rounding that out is Kansas, North Carolina. This one right here, I must have went through about 5 or 6 pages of scratch outs. Do I want this? No, this one was really hard. Couple games, not so much, but most of it was like, man, this is really, really hard. Second round, to open things up in San Antonio, LSU versus UCLA. I have UCLA and beating LSU in a nail biter, 80-77. Kareem, 31 points with 14 rebounds, and Jamal Wilkes with 20 points. Unfortunately, Rudy Mackman couldn't handle Jamal Wilkes' athleticism. Shaq had 19 points, Maravich had 18. So UCLA moves on to the next round, moves on to the Final Four. Next one, Georgetown versus Kentucky in Charlotte. Hoyas win this one 75-71. I got Ewing going for 20, Iverson with 19. Mashburn gets 25 and Goose Givens gets 19. Mashburn gets 25, Goose Givens gets 19, but I have Georgetown beating Kentucky in the next round to move on.
Okay.
Now the next one, Syracuse versus UConn in Brooklyn. This one right here, I think could be the game of the tournament. I have Syracuse winning this one 85-83 in overtime. Kemba Walker hits a three-pointer to tie the game at 73 to send it into overtime. Then I got Pearl Washington hitting game-winning free throws, two free throws at the end of overtime to give Syracuse a 2-point win in overtime. Carmelo, 27 points. Dave Bing with 20 points. Pearl Washington, 14 points and 11 assists. UConn was led by Ray Allen with 24. Kemba Walker, 18 points and 8 assists. Okay, and to end the semifinal with the quarterfinal round or whatever you want to call it, the round before the Final Four, Kansas, North Carolina in New Orleans. I have North Carolina beating Kansas 85-79. Chamberlain in the losing effort was the leading scorer. He had 31 points and 20 rebounds. And Paul Pierce had 19 in the losing effort. But the player of the game was James Worthy. 25 points, Jordan with 20, and Bob McAdoo with 18. Now we have the Final Four. And if you're going to have a Final Four like this, Chuck, it has to be at the Garden. Has to be in Madison Square Garden. Has to be.
Okay.
I understand that, they want to put them in big stadiums and football stadiums and baseball stadiums now. No. This has to be at the Mecca. It has to be at Madison Square Garden. The first semifinal. Well, the Final Four, let me go through my Final Four teams. The teams are UCLA. They would be playing Georgetown. Syracuse plays North Carolina. In the first semifinal matchup, we have UCLA playing Georgetown, and the game is close for most of it until UCLA pulls away late, thanks to the backcourt, thanks to the front court, mainly of Wilkes, Walton, and Kareem. Kareem has 18 points. Jamal Wilkes has 15. Goodrich has 12 points with 11 assists. In a losing effort, Iverson drops 30. Okay, because Sidney Wicks just could not keep because not Sidney Wicks, but Gail Goodrich can't really keep in front of Iverson. Okay. Iverson goes for 30. Reggie Williams has 12 points. Ewing 11 points and 12 rebounds. Okay, so I have UCLA in the championship game. They're going to be playing North Carolina, and they will beat Syracuse 66-63. UNC pulls off at the end of the game. Key defensive stop late by Tyler Hansborough. Sam Perkins hits a game-winner three with less than 10 seconds remaining. Jordan goes for 20, Worthy with 18, McAdoo with 15. In the losing effort, Anthony goes for 21 points, Pearl Washington 15 points and 10 assists. That moves us to the title game between UCLA and North Carolina. And I have UCLA winning by 77-70. Kareem and Walton both they run the offense through both of them down low. Kareem goes for 21 points and 15 rebounds. He's the tournament MVP. Walton 14 points, 9 rebounds, and 11 assists. One assist shot, one rebound shy of a triple double. Gail Goodrich 10 points with 11 assists. So I have UCLA winning the whole thing, beating UNC 77-70. So there
Okay,
you have it.
pretty good. Um, pretty good. Very interesting, and you methodically thought this out. I kind of did it a bit differently,
Okay.
um, which may not bear well because I think I didn't anticipate doing what you did, where you wound up taking kind of like similar to how the NFL playoff goes, where if that one seed is sitting on that bye that first weekend after
Yeah.
wild card weekend, they take whoever the lowest seed is remaining, hence the second round matchup between
Right.
UCLA and LSU.
Right.
What I did was the traditional
You felt like it's just a traditional bracket. Okay, that's fine. That's
NCAA
cool. That's
format.
cool. That's cool.
So these are my matchups as follows and all that. So we got Indiana versus LSU, you know, at the old I don't know what the name of it is, at the old dome where the Rams used to play in St. Louis. That's where we
Okay,
got
Edward Jones Dome.
Edward Jones Dome. So, they don't never use it unless somebody comes to concert, usually someone like Taylor Swift or the Dave Matthews Band or
Well,
like
I
you
think
know,
what a UFL team plays there now. The St. Louis
okay,
Battlehawks play there now. But that's the only thing is being used for that, and maybe like a Big 12 championship game or something like that, or a bowl. I don't even know if a bowl game even is played at Edward Jones. I'm not even sure. Then I'm not even sure if it's still called the Edward Jones Dome, to be completely honest.
correct, correct. So that's so I had that in kind of similar. I didn't really go deep in terms of stats, just in terms of I'm just going to explain the overall
Okay,
theme and how I
okay,
arrived at
that's
my
fine.
conclusion. Okay, so Indiana versus LSU. I got LSU winning similarly to you. I got them winning 79-74.
Okay,
Basically the theme of the game was, you know, Steve Alford trying to contain Chris Jackson out, Mahmoud Abdul Rauf. No.
right.
He was getting killed. Shaq was killing Spencer Haywood, as you alluded to,
Yeah,
inside. They couldn't do anything. Then when they tried to double down, they were kicking it out to Bob Pettit. They had that high-low post thing going between Shaq and Bob Pettit, and it was a bit too much. LSU, but this is where I came in at. LSU early in the second half was up 17 with 8 to go, but then old Dale Brown struck. And the Hoosiers made a big run led by Isaiah Thomas, kicking it to Alford for threes. Are we playing twos? I'm playing by now, Ruth, so whatever.
right.
Playing by threes and got a minute, and then they went to the Hacker Shack. So we had
Yeah,
to take Shack out and put in the replacement because they were going to Hacker Shack. That's how they got back into the ball game. That's how they got back
right.
into the ball game. So we went small with old High
Right.
C, you
Yep.
know, with old
Yep.
High C. So, they was able, got inside and then they were able like making them foul because the Hacker Shack, even though a downside of it is you get Shaq to miss a whole bunch of free throws. The
Right.
upside of it is you get into the penalty relatively quickly
Yeah,
to give
exactly.
opportunities to those who can shoot the free throws.
Right.
You know what I mean? So that played a big role in the game as, toward the stretch, the combination of Chris Jackson and Pete Maravich, they went 100% from the line to kind of seal it out, and LSU holds on by a thread because Dale Brown, he kind of started taking the out of the ball and then not playing,
Right.
and that nearly came back to bite him. Okay, second matchup, Kansas versus Arizona. Got this this game is at the Oracle in Oakland, California,
Okay.
where
All
the
right.
Dubs play.
Okay.
That's what this game is, And to me, similar to you, this was the absolute easiest game to pick in the entire tournament.
Right.
I got Kansas winning. I got Kansas winning 82 to 68. But Arizona was never in the game. The guard attack of like BB and Khalid Reeves and Jason Terry gave them some minor to moderate problems, but it was kind of like an up and down. It was kind of like an up and down game. So
Right.
what really wound up taking hold was just the utter mismatch of Wilt Chamberlain versus Channing Frye. I just can't. Wilt let a lot of food on the table that he should have left, but he's not going to leave food on the table due to Channing Frye. Not
No.
happening. So
No.
Wilt is still, he had that patented finger roll from 15 where he have his back to the basket and he'll shoot it darn near backwards off the finger roll off the glass from 15 feet. He had that going. And
then basically do it right over Channing Frye's head.
Yeah. So it was easy money, man. It was easy money. It was just easy money. They just, and then
Right.
Kansas tried to pick up the pace with them. They tried to pick up the pace with Kansas, but then you got, you had Rafe LaFrench that can shoot threes and handle the
Yeah.
ball. Paul Pierce can handle the ball. So they really couldn't do anything there. Okay. Then I got Duke versus Georgetown. Now, just like you, this is the game that I went back and forth on 2 dozen times.
Yeah.
Went back and forth 2 dozen times. So we, this game is at the old, even though this is fantasy, so we make it up the stadium now. I know the Philadelphia Spectrum no longer exists, but this game would be played at the Spectrum, and just for reference, this is the venue that hosted the Miracle Shot,
Christian Layton against Kentucky. Yes,
against
right.
Kentucky,
in
right?
92.
You remember that. Then that's the game where Dr. J rocked the crater and blapped over Coop Head.
Yeah.
That's also the game where Magic Johnson, the venue rather, where Magic Johnson played center as a rookie and won. And then the most 2 important happenings of that stadium, Super Fights 1 and 2.
Right.
Rocky Balboa versus Apollo
Creed. Yeah.
Creed had it won in the 15th round. If you listen to old Tony and just stay away from him. But Creed, Rocky was the first one to go the entire distance with Creed, because you remember Rocky was like saying, if I could see that final bell, it would be the first time in my life where I realized that I'm more than just some bum from the neighborhood. And he left, and then the beginning of Rocky 2, Creed was like, he must got a dull skull, because what you did, you the luckiest man on the face of the planet, that I want you to know that. And Rocky was like, do I look lucky? So Rocky pulled it out in Super Fight 2. But anyway,
one more thing about the Spectrum and fights. One of the greatest fights in NBA Finals history between Lucas for the Trailblazer, Maurice Lucas and Darryl Dawkins in game 1 of the in 70s. And what was it, game 2 of the 77 finals? Between Portland and Philly. That one of the greatest fights in bench clearing brawls in finals history. But I just wanted to throw that in there when you're talking about historic things that took place at the Spectrum.
Well, since you want to throw that in, I have to do an addendum. You also got the recollecting that 81 Eastern Conference Finals, 76 versus Celtics. dude under the basket was talking stuff. The Cornbread Maxwell, he went into the stands and
Yep.
got active with him in the stands. No technicals,
Nope.
no technicals, no ejections, no fines. Play ball. I miss
Right.
those days. He went behind the basket and went and got home. And he was talking greasy. Cornbread Maxwell was like, okay,
Right.
let's get it.
Right.
And what the fan wasn't kicked out, no nothing. Oh, how I
Right.
long for the old days. But anyway, I got Duke versus Georgetown. I got Duke over Georgetown. 82 to 78. I'm going to tell you why. Why?
Okay.
Okay, we know Georgetown is going to come with that high pressure defense and all of that, the press, the press, the press. But they had Jay Williams. They also had Johnny Dawkins. They got Grant
Right.
Hill who can all dribble, handle the ball. They have point guard capabilities as well as obviously scoring capabilities. All three were well
Mm-hmm.
rounded. But then to boot on top of that, you also got two big men that could play in the high post, play in the low post, play behind the 3-point line. They could get in that high post, they could pass, dribble, and shoot. You
Right.
know, and so they were having some trouble with the Ewing and Mourning physicality at first, but then Coach K kind of made the adjustments. They went 2-3 zone to kind
Right.
of eliminate big men outside. And even though Iverson is a tremendous slasher, stand-up shooter, especially in college, not as much. And
Right.
then I just could not get past the fact, because I know I wanted to pick Georgetown, but it's just a few instances where I just couldn't get past the fact. Instance number one, the 82 championship game against North Carolina. You
Right.
know, the clutch, they were there to win the game. Freddie Brown throws the ball to the wrong man, to James Worthy, and all of that. Boom. Okay, no shame in losing to Dean Smith, Michael Jordan, Sam Perkins, James Worthy. Okay, fine. But what is unforgivable is the 85 final in Lexington and Rupp Arena against.
Right.
You mean, okay, I love Patrick Ewing. You know how much I love Patrick Ewing, right?
Right.
You can't take Ed Picnic, man. You know,
Right.
I mean, you can't dominate him.
Right.
And if I remember in that game, that was the last game that was played without a shot clock. They didn't have the shot
Yes,
clock that
that's
year,
right. That's
and
right.
Villanova was holding it moments at a time. Then I also remember the '89 regional final, Georgetown versus Duke. Ironically, and Duke beat them. They had both Mutombo and Morning, and Christian Laettner still sent them both home, and all of
Right.
that, right? So pretty much what I am getting at is, whether it's Georgetown, whether it's John Thompson, they just, no matter what their talent level was, they seem to always fall short, or find a way to come short at the most important times. Because I know Patrick Ewing made 3 Final Fours, but
Yeah.
they have only one championship, and a championship they probably would not have gotten had Clyde Drexler not departed Houston for the pros the year before, after that '83 final
Yeah.
versus Jim Valvano and the
North Carolina
Wolfpack of
State.
North Carolina State. So
Now let
we
me
got
ask you
one
something
there.
real quick. Let me
Yes,
ask you
sir.
something real quick
Feel
about
free.
Georgetown during that time. And this is something that I have just noticed, okay? And maybe is just the way it ended up being or what, but it seems to me everybody talks about the 82 Final Four. Fine. You got, in my opinion, the most star-studded Final Four in the history of the tournament.
Okay.
Okay, even today, you had Houston, Phi Slamma Jamma. You had North Carolina, who you mentioned. You had Georgetown with Patrick Ewing in Georgetown. You had Louisville with the McCray brothers. And Lancaster, I mean, you had the Doctors of Dunk with
Mm-hmm.
Louisville. That was the most star-studded Final Four.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody remembers that.
Yes, sir.
Everybody remembers 85. Not only because of Villanova beating Georgetown, but you also had St. John's in the
Yes.
Final Four. You had 3 teams from the same conference in the Final Four. Georgetown loses that one to Villanova, obviously. The 84 championship team, the 84 championship year has been somewhat forgotten. You think about it, it's like, okay, yeah, Georgetown won a national championship, and yeah, and it's almost like you think about it as if it's like, oh yeah, that's right, they did win a national championship in '84, and that '84 team has been largely forgotten. Do you understand, or do you know, or do you think why that is?
They came up short because you
Yeah,
have to consider um not as egregious, but very similar to the Michigan Fab Five era.
yeah,
They were like how we mentioned in the last episode, the landscape of college basketball was rapidly changing.
yeah,
New stars were being made, new players, new coaches, all kind of story arcs, all kind of player arcs, all kind of coaches arcs, all kind of new rivalries were beginning and things like that.
right,
But also, if you remember during the 80s, right? Hip hop was kind of really beginning to take form and all
yeah,
of that. And Fab Five would later do this, but and not folks don't misunderstand what I'm saying. I'm just talking about how it was. Who was Black America's college basketball team in the 80s?
Georgetown,
They were a cultural phenomenon. You know, everybody, rallied around Georgetown, wanting them to do well because, they had the black coach and the strong black coach in general and John Thompson. He represented the best of values in terms
yeah,
of, okay, due to being at Georgetown and the academic standard that they have, you
yeah,
had to be just as much as a student as
yeah,
you had to be
a
athlete. So
player,
student
right,
athlete. You know what I
yeah,
mean? You couldn't just be an athlete going to school. And then
yeah,
also how John Thompson was also a father figure to a lot of those kids and recruits he had in there. And
yeah,
then by extension, he was also kind of similarly to Cliff Huxtable in the Cosby Show, where he was America's father. Period.
yeah,
John Thompson had a similar impact in
yeah,
urban America as well. So
yeah,
if you look at all of that, you would think, okay, this is a big era, kind of like similarly when we talked about like similarly, we talked about like the 49ers before, or we talked about El Capitan, the
yeah,
Yankees when we had the Major League Baseball era, right?
yeah,
When they were at the pinnacle, they had the hardware to back that up.
yeah,
You know what I mean? Whereas Georgetown, for its influential and as for influential and epic and larger than life as they were, when you
right,
look on the basketball court, one title. And then the
yeah,
same thing in terms of Michigan, right? Um, Fab Five era, right? It,
yeah. The Fab Five era lasted what, 2 years?
2 years, but even the entire time, and I don't want to take it the wrong way because I've matured and I'm much older now. At the time when they were at the pinnacle, I was 17. I was like 11th grade, 11th to 12th grade in high school. But even then, they were more, um, as Ric Flair would should say, they were more show than go. You
Right,
understand what I'm saying? Because if you look
right,
at, because I never forget, right? When they had the 30 for 30, not getting too far off the topic, I'm sorry.
right,
But when they
yeah,
had the 30 for 30 thing on the Fab Five, you remember they lost the championship game, the Chris Webber timeout game in the New Orleans
yeah,
Superdome when Chris
mm-hmm.
Webber called timeout. They had George Lynch. They had
Eric Montross, they had
was it
Derek
Donald
Williams,
Williams,
Donald Williams,
Dante Calabria.
yeah,
They had guys like that, right? Not a lot of star power, but they got beat. And then I still remember Jalen Rose when he was talking about on the 30 for 30 documentary after the game, where we lost the game, but we still got we still was rock stars and got the VIP treatment in the club and they couldn't. You know what I mean? So it's a
yeah,
lot of,
yeah.
more looking at it from a basketball standpoint, they lost to a team they absolutely should have
Ooh,
beaten in 93. And
yeah,
then they played Duke in the 92 final, blown. I mean blown. And
yeah,
they were freshmen, okay, fine. but you can't come back the next year and then lose to Dante Calabria. Then, and I think Georgetown is very, very similar despite all of the talent that they have had through the years. And I think that's why they're largely forgotten about. And then on top of that, not only did they have only one national championship in that particular era, that is the only championship that they have, period.
Yeah. Yeah.
And as influential as they were in basketball, definitely from the inception of the 80s through the mid to late 90s, they were very, very influential. And the basketball success doesn't quite parallel the influence they have. Hence, that's why I think that they are more forgotten about. And I also think that the fact that they haven't really been relevant in 20 years hurts a lot too. Where like a lot of these other programs that we are talking about, they had their eras when we were kids, but they have still had
relevance.
Different runs and different relevance and different periods of success during our adulthood.
Right. So you have Duke beating Georgetown in this round, correct?
Yes, I do, because I just can't overlook the fact that Georgetown always tended to blow a game that they had no business blowing. Whereas on the other hand, Coach K, when he had the horses, how many times? Maybe the 99 title game against Connecticut, maybe.
Yeah.
He did not tend to
lose.
If he had all the cards, he was holding all the cards, he tended to get it done. In key moments, he tended to, even when he had lesser talent, he had tendency to win games and titles he had no business winning. Hence that 91 title when they knocked off UNLV.
Right.
And then, we talked a few weeks ago about how they literally stole a game against Maryland in College Park and things like that. Now, a lot of times the referees because we can't forget that 92 reaching the final in Philadelphia, Christian Laettner went perfect, but everybody forgets that he stomped in that dude's chest in the middle of the game and should have been, and everybody saw it. He should have been ejected, and he wasn't. But and that's why. And I think even though they got the players, John Thompson is a Hall of Fame coach, but I think the gap between he and Coach K is fairly significant, and that's the difference in the ball game.
Okay, so who do you have next?
Michigan State. We got Michigan State versus Syracuse. Now, this is going to draw a little ire because we're going to have that game at the old Silverdome in the D. The real D, not Dallas, Detroit, baby. We're going to have it. Anita Baker sings the national anthem. And then old school. We don't have. I didn't really watch the Final Four this weekend, but I've heard that they had a musical performance at the halftime of the games or something. And it's like, man, what the hell is going on, man?
Right.
It's just like, it's just like I love.
Yeah, they had like a musical performance in between the two games.
Correct. Like I love, my favorite food is Italian food, right? But I also love like hibachi. I love sushi. Even though I love them both, I don't want them
at the same time. Right.
I don't want them both in the same meal. I don't need that. That's what killed music to a degree, which I could talk about all day, killed all the genres. But they started mixing everything, and now you have no true genres anymore. But anyway, I got Michigan State over Syracuse 76-64. I think they beat them quite handily. Magic Johnson, once again, same thing as Georgetown, and even more egregious. Syracuse just had a tendency to lose their poise at the worst times and the biggest times, make boneheaded plays. And they were a team that, unlike Duke, which I just kind of outlined as well as we spoke about the previous episode, whereas Duke had a tendency to, in order to beat them, you have to outplay them because they weren't going to beat themselves. The opposite was always true for Syracuse and Jim Boeheim. They would hand you a ball game in a minute. Merry Christmas. Here go the ball game. Merry Christmas. So I think Between that, Tom Izzo, they also have the best player on the court in Magic Johnson. And I know
Yeah.
they're kind of lacking a little firepower, but I think Magic, he was going down in that 5 hole and he was creating opportunities for Sean Reshford. And, he was just dead eye from the
Yeah.
outside. And I just think between all of that, Magic was far too much to be handled. He was too big for Pearl Washington. And then
Yeah.
he was just too quick and too savvy for Coleman nor Ronnie Cycli to handle, while
Yeah.
at the same time maintaining, holding his own on the boards against those two.
Yeah.
Okay, so now I did a lot of talking, but anyway,
You good,
now
man. You
we
good.
got so now got the second round. We got, because normally that second round matchup would have been 4 or 5. So
Yeah.
hence, since LSU won second round, UNC versus LSU at the old Omni in Atlanta.
All
That's
right.
the old Omni, the house, like I told you before, the house that Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, and
Yeah.
Dominique Wilkins built, baby.
Yep.
So I got them. Now I got, unbelievably, I got LSU beating them
What?
79-78, because
What?
whereas before, right? We said before in the previous episode that neither of us wanted Tyler Hansbrough, but
Yeah.
in fairness, it was no way to keep him
Him
off
off the team,
because
right?
he's probably by far the most accomplished player in UNC history
At center, right?
at center. However, when we're talking head to head, Shaq versus Hansbrough, even in college, Hansbrough against Bob Pettit. Next, who got next? Basically, I
Right.
just think it was too much to overcome. And then also you also got to factor in. You remember what I told you? You remember what I said? I said, who's the only person that is only one person that could ever stop Michael Jordan? Who is that one person?
Dean Smith.
There you go. He always had a tendency, and I understood why he did it, because he wanted to teach the game the right way, and you know, and cohesion, teamwork, and all that. But he always had a tendency to lock his horses in the barn, man.
Yeah.
He always had a tendency to do that, where Les Miles used to do that in football at
Right.
LSU, but that's another story for another day. But he always had a tendency to kind of handcuff his players himself. He didn't allow them to play off of instinct. And sometimes you get in certain games and things like that, it's not going to be the X's and O's that wins the game. It's going to be who wins the individual matchups.
Right. Right.
So I think between the advantages in the front court between Shaq, Bob Pettit, Tyler Hansbrough, Sam Perkins, Big Game James gave us some trouble,
Yeah.
But then I also think, even though we got Jordan and Field forward, who's going to chase Chris Jackson around? Because we got Pistol Pete at point, and Pistol Pete lighting up too. Both of them, when they cross half court, they're in shooting range when they both come across. So I just think that running Chris Jackson off all them screens, and then sometimes clearing the floor out, even against Jordan,
Yeah.
right? Because Chris used to light Jordan up in the pros. Remember that?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh yeah.
He's hard head to head. He's hard to contain. And then you got Maravich, who's about 6'4". He's
Mhm.
2-guard size, but with two guard scoring ability, but one guard talent in terms of distribution of the ball and all of that. So I just think it was a little bit too much to overcome. So I got LSU over North Carolina 79-78. Okay, next game. I got UConn. I got UConn versus Kansas. This game was at the Madhouse on Madison.
All
Chicago
right.
Stadium.
In Chicago. Okay.
Chicago Stadium.
The old Chicago Stadium.
The
okay.
old Chicago Stadium. That is at the Madhouse on Madison. To me, this game was fairly easy to pick. Because
Okay.
from this standpoint, right, they are the complete antithesis of what I described with Georgetown, as well as the Fab Five era Michigan Wolverines, where
Right.
you know they they've had clout, they've had prestige, but they've never been a cultural phenomenon in any way.
You talking
Not
about
not not
Kansas or
no, I'm
UConn?
referring to UConn. I'm
Okay.
referring to UConn. They've never really been a cultural phenomenon in
Right.
any way, especially like like
And
in
even
terms of
now, if you really think about it, even now, they played in 3 national championship games in 4 years. They've won 2 of them, and they're still not really a national phenomenon. The
correct.
women are, the women are, but not the men.
Man, don't get me started on that dude, bro. That dude is a sucker, man.
He
Straight
is,
up,
yeah, yeah.
he a
Gino
sucker.
Auriemma, I've never really liked him. Never really did.
You
And
know
what?
me, man. You know me, right? Because
Yeah,
I'm a guy that I got a lot to say while I'm playing you.
yeah,
But if you beat me fair and square, the first person who will shake your hand and tell you good job, you balled today, will be me.
yeah,
Because you remember first time I played you, you know, first time I played you, I got humiliated, man, because I played you on my home court that I grew up playing on. Remember, in my
yeah.
neighborhood. And
Right.
remember, I was trying to guard you. You hit me with that jab step crossover, and I sprained my ankle on my home court, man. And you
I
torched
remember
me.
that.
You torched me that day. I felt so. It was my home court. I had my own name, and all my buddies, my crew, we had our names spray painted on the court because those were
Yep.
our stomping grounds coming up.
Right.
And you pulling up, you pulling up in my face right where my name is spray painted at, man. Bam, get it out the net, man. But
But wait,
what did what did I
but you
say?
dabbed me up afterwards. You
What
dabbed
did
me
I
up
say after that?
afterwards. Yeah, you told me, man, you play your butt off.
That's it. That's all he had. That's all he had to do. And on top of that, you're doing that to a woman. You getting aggressive with a woman like that, man.
Yeah.
Come on, man. You a sucker. But anyway, on to this. Their UConn is the opposite. If you
Right.
look at their cultural impact, it's minimal.
Yeah.
But their actual meat, their actual accomplishment is huge, both during the Calhoun era as well as the now Hurley era. But I said all that to say they've had some great players. Like I got Jesus Shuttlesworth, Ray Allen was
Yeah.
great, Rip Hamilton was pretty good, Okafor was okay in college. But they've never, other than Ray Allen, they've never really had that guy that was just that dude. They've never had that.
They've not,
You
you're
know,
right. They never really had that one particular transcendent player.
they didn't have that. But with that, but going up against Wilt, man, you gotta have that, man.
Yeah, you
Going
do.
up against Wilt. That is essential. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. Now they call him an underachiever, but let's look at who knocked him off. We talking Bill Russell. We talking Red Auerbach. We talking Willis Reed. These the cats he was losing to. You know
Right.
what I mean?
But now to be fair, during his college years in the 1950s, Kansas did make it to a national championship game against North Carolina in 56, I want to say.
Mhm.
And they lost.
He
Then the
always
national
loses the big game.
he lost to a team whose tallest player I think was 6'5", and they lost
If I'd
to
have
North
known that, I
Carolina.
would even. If I'd have known that, I would even pick them on the Kansas team just for that, man. You,
You had, like, who was it? I think who said that was Fog Allen, who said that we could win a national championship with Will Chamberlain and 4 cheerleaders. Or something like, or he said something to the effect of, we could win a national championship with Will Chamberlain, 2 managers, and 2 cheerleaders.
well, I could tell you
And
this much.
obviously, it didn't happen.
I can tell you this much. If he had the two of us in 1956, he's winning that title going away.
Yeah.
You know, I'm just saying. You know what I mean? I'm just saying. Because you know me, I'm going to get in with, man, dude, 6'5", man. It's time for you to put some work in.
Yep, exactly. That's the way
Man,
you
you
are,
gonna let
man.
because you know how I am, man. You're going to let a 6'5" dude shut you down, bro. For real. You know,
Yeah,
if
for
you don't
real,
get in here and
man.
put in some work, man, come on, man. But anyway, I just think that with the combination of peers, the friends, JoJo White. They got Paul Pierce. It's just it's too much. It's too
Yeah.
much. It's too much for UConn to handle. Now Calhoun, the master, he makes it close, but I think it's a relatively low scoring game, defensive game. I got Kansas winning 64-58 because I just think they can't they can't get anything going inside because Wild is erasing all that. The French had some size and shot blocking ability as well, and then they just couldn't contain them on offense. So
Oh,
I got
okay.
them winning as well. Okay,
All right.
next round we got we got we got we got Kentucky second seed um versus Duke. This game is going to be
Of
played.
course, we got another rivalry here, another big game between these two.
Yeah, you got another big game. You got another big game in these two. Now this game here is going to take place. Now this is torn down. It's a parking lot now, but this game is going to take place at the old Cap Center
In DC, in
in Landover,
Landover,
Maryland,
in
just outside
Landover,
of
just
yes,
outside of
that's
DC, right?
just outside of DC, the old Cap Center. This game is going to take place to second seeded Duke versus seventh seeded Duke versus Kentucky. So I got I got Duke beating them too.
Yeah.
I just
Mm-hmm.
think I got Duke beating them 74-62. They had some minor problems with Mashburn and Issel in
Yeah.
particular, but I think Leitner got, even though Davis is very good, but he was
Right.
just a freshman at the time. The old season vet Leitner and Ferry, they drew two quick fouls on Anthony Davis within the
Right.
early moments of the game, and then they just kind of, it was one of them games where Kentucky was always within 6 or 7 points for most of the game, but it felt
Right.
like, you know, even though the game is close, it feels like they're not in the game just
Right.
by the tenor and the tone of the game. It just felt like they were not ever in the game. Tony Delk, he couldn't get it going. Kyle Macy, he couldn't really get it going or anything like that. So, because Jay Williams, we had they put Battier on Mashburn, made Mashburn, even though he still
Yeah.
got like 24, but it was just such a hard fought 24
Right.
that
He had to work for them 24 points
yeah,
because that's what Battier was going. That's what Battier would do. Battier would
yes,
make you work for those whatever points you're gonna get. You're gonna work for them 24. Especially when during the time he was at Duke, especially during that time.
yes. And it's going to be a hard fought 24. Then I think the absence of Anthony Davis for long stretches of time, since you know most of this lineup um sans Jay Williams were all 4-year players. I think Grant only played 3, maybe. No, he played 4 too. All of
Yeah.
them were 4-year players, and Anthony Davis was just a freshman. So I think
Yeah.
the lack of experience on his part really hurt big in this game, because he was matched up against, as I mentioned before, Leitner and Ferry. They both had the ability to shoot from three, um, face up from outside, hit the outside shot, make plays from others from the high post, as well as
Right.
play well in the low post and hold their own in terms of not only rebounding on the boards, but also interior defense as well. They were not big time defenders, but adequate. So I think that was the
Okay.
difference in the game. Duke over Kentucky, 74-62. Then
Okay.
this leaves the last game. UCLA. We got UCLA versus Michigan State. This game is going to be played at the Houston Astrodome in Houston.
All
You know,
right.
so and then obviously you got Alcindor, you got Bill Walton, man, you got Gail Goodrich. It's just, and as good as Magic was, and as great of a coach as Tom Izzo is, and you got John Wooden as his counterpart, who at minimum is going to cancel him out at minimum. If
Yeah.
not, that's probably a little surplus there. So then you
Yeah.
factor in the fact that it's that Goodrich, you got Goodrich, Ed
Si-
O'Bannon running in, slashing. He gets like 12 to 14 points without any plays being run for him.
Right.
Without any
Right.
plays. And then Alcindor and Bill Walton, they're dominating all game long,
All
and then
right.
things like that. So I got UCLA over Michigan State. I got them over Michigan State 75-61 in the
All
Houston
right.
Astrodome.
In the
So
dome.
now,
Okay. So now you got your Final Four, right?
yes, I got my Final Four. I got my Final Four. So now, you know, Final Four is going to be held. Um, where are we going to put? We're going to we're going to have the Final Four this year at the Seattle Kingdom. That's where we're going to have it at.
You're
You
going
know,
to the
this,
Great Northwest. Okay.
yeah, we're going to put it all the way up there, so it's not close to anybody. No
That's right.
excuses.
That's
No
right.
excuses. It's not close to anybody. And Seattle hosted the Final Four. Ironically, the year Georgetown beat Houston, the
Yeah.
Seattle hosted. They had the Final Four at the Kingdom that year. That's when
Yeah.
Georgetown beat Dinner Bell,
Houston.
Mel Turpin,
Yep.
Sam Bowie, and what's the boy, Joe B. Hall, and then
Yep.
came and then beat Houston in
In a
the
lot.
the
Over.
remnants of Five Slamma Jamma in the
Yeah.
championship game.
That's
You
right.
know, so
And overmatched Hakeem Olajuwon. He was just overmatched in that game.
correct, correct. So you got number 7 Duke versus Kansas. You know, hard fought ball game, but I got Duke winning. I got Duke winning at 75-68. I
Okay.
just think just the prowess of Coach K and Christian Laettner, because see, everybody forgets, because it's very hard, and I'm sure our listeners is going to have a similar problem. Um, it's very hard to take in these players, and we know how their pro careers panned out.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to not factor that in, but I did my best as I could to not factor that in. And you
Right.
got to figure, okay, possibly outside of Bill Walton and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, probably the most accomplished player after that individually was Tyler Hansbrough, but um, probably after Alcindor and Walton, probably the best overall college player was probably Leitner after that.
Yeah. Right.
He probably was the best overall college player in this entire tournament, sans Walton and Alcindor. And
Right.
then he also has arguably, definitely at minimum, the second, well, possibly third, because second would be out of Coach K and the General Robert Montgomery Knight, as the one spot is obviously John Wooden in
Yeah.
terms of the coaches. So, we got Duke over Kansas 75-68. Hard fought game throughout, things like that. But it kind of came down to turnovers by JoJo White and free throw shooting. Because,
Right.
Wilt just could not, they got plenty of foul shooting opportunities, but Wilt couldn't knock them down. Whereas Duke, they usually shoot about 80% from the line. And ultimately the free throws were the game. Then we got
Mm-hmm.
second national semifinal is number 1 UCLA versus the 12th seed, the Cinderella LSU.
All right.
LSU makes a spirited charge. They hang with them throughout the game, and all of that. It's the closest nip and tuck, game. LSU is up 1 at halftime. At the 10-minute mark of the second half, LSU was only down 4, and the Tiger faithful in the Kingdom was up on their feet. But then the final 10 minutes of the game, Lou Alcindor, Bill Walton, and the championship pedigree takes over, and UCLA winds up beating LSU 84-67 rather comfortably, because
All right.
it was tight for three three-fourths of the game, but then the championship experience, the championship pedigree, and so
Right.
forth. And even though Shaq was good in his own right in college, Walton and Alcindor were far more polished than he
Yeah.
was, and they probably were both far more polished in college than Shaq ever was, even once he got to the league.
Yeah.
As far as like fundamentals things and like that, they were more polished
Yeah.
than he was
Absolutely.
even then. So I got UCLA over LSU 64-67. So the final game is going to be UCLA versus the Duke Blue Devils. And then I got, Christian Laettner gave it his all, but basically part of the problem he ran into in the pros befell him this night. He's not really a true five. It's hard for him to match up against a true five. And
Yeah.
UCLA had a pair of them in all of that. And then, Johnny Dawkins, Jay Williams, they were able to get some things. They were able to get some things done. The Grant Hill Ed O'Bannon matchup was quite interesting, but really Walton dominated Danny Ferry, and then in terms, not Dan, yeah, Danny Ferry, and then in terms, Alcindor versus Christian Laettner, as great as he was, you know, arguably Lou Alcindor is probably the best college player of all time. He won
Right.
3 titles in 4 years, and the only reason why he didn't get 4 is because freshmen were not eligible to
Eligible to
play
play.
back in
Right.
those days. So if he had been able to play then, he would have won. He would have won all 4, and I think they beat them fairly comfortably. I got them over Duke 87-70. National champions, UCLA Bruins.
Now to talk about UCLA and the Alcindor era, when he was a freshman, it was said that, well, this actually happened, that his freshman team played the varsity team in an inter-squad game on campus the night Pauley Pavilion opened on campus, on UCLA's campus. The freshman team beat the varsity by like 30, okay, with Alcindor. Okay, to show how dominant he was. He beat the varsity team, which was the number 1 team in the country at the time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Okay, so essentially, UCLA's varsity was the number 1 team in the country, but they're the number 2 team on campus. So that just lets you know what the world was, what UCLA had in store for the entire college basketball world in 1967, going into the 67 season. You know what I'm saying? So that's crazy, to say the least. Now, we both have UCLA winning our supposed all-time alumni tournament championships, right?
Correct.
We're going to take a short break. I have UCLA winning. You have UCLA winning. But just to give you a little bit of a tease, our AI friend does not have UCLA winning. We're going to take a short break, and we're going to come back, and we're going to go through what AI says as we put in the rosters and everything into AI, and we're going to determine and have AI determine who wins it. Now, is this a final say? Who knows? It's up to you. If you want to take it for granted or not, it's up to you. Totally up to you. I think it's interesting, but they don't have UCLA winning it. So more on that right after this short break. You're listening to the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast here on the Sports History Network. And we're back, and you're listening to the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast. Dana Augusta, along with Charles Combs, and we just went through our predictions to see who was going to win our Historically Speaking Sports all-time alumni tournament, and we both have UCLA winning the championship in this supposed tournament. Now, we put the rosters and these teams in AI to see who would win in a supposed 12-team tournament. Now, the 12-team tournament, as we talked about, what I did was on my end was I took the lowest seeded team and advanced them to the next round. The lowest seeded team that won would advance to the next round to face the highest seeded team remaining. So with that formula in place, this is what we came up with. Well, this is what AI came up with, I should say. The opening game of the tournament, we have LSU playing Indiana in the opening round of the tournament. Now, what AI did was, Chuck, and I thought this was really cool, was that they actually gave a scouting report for each game.
Oh wow. Okay.
So I thought that was really neat. Okay.
Okay.
Now, LSU squad, the strengths are elite scoring with Maravich and Mahmoud Abdul Rauf with insane shot creation, dominant interior, Shaq and Pettit overwhelming offensively, and the pace. This team runs and scores fast. Yet their weaknesses, defense. Defense is questionable on the perimeter. And Rudy Macklin is solid, but not an elite compared to Indiana's wings. Okay. Now, as for Indiana, their strengths, discipline and defense, team chemistry, these guys fit perfectly together in clutch leadership. Isaiah Thomas is a killer in late game situations.
Okay.
Weaknesses, not as explosive as LSU. And the front court might struggle physically versus Shaq. Okay. Then it went down to key matchups. Maravich versus Alford. Maravich cooks here, too creative and too dynamic. Isaiah Thomas versus Mahmoud Abdul Rauf. This is a tight, but Isaiah Thomas brings defense, leadership. Abdul Rauf brings scoring and a slight edge to Isaiah Thomas overall. Coaching. Huge edge to Bob Knight. His system maximizes talent and controls tempo. Now, according to the game flow, LSU wants it fast and high scoring. Indiana wants control, half court execution, and defense. If the game gets chaotic, LSU wins. If it's controlled and physical, Indiana wins. Final, Indiana wins a close game 82-78. Why? Better team balance, stronger defensive identity, Bob Knight and Isaiah Thomas, elite late game execution. So they have LSU losing to Indiana in the first round.
Reasonable. We both. I know I picked LSU. You did as well, right?
Yeah.
I just that Steve Alford, man. But the general, if it's a way to be done, the general can do it. And if it's a way to find a way to drop the ball, Dale Brown can do it. Despite he's a very good coach too. But so that's a reasonable assessment. To be
Yeah.
honest with you, I can, even though I slightly disagree, it's not a strong disagreement. I can see the game playing out that way.
Okay, the next game, Kansas versus Arizona. Kansas is starting identity, size, dominance inside, and clutch scoring. While for Arizona, identity, guard play, shooting pace, and versatility, which is patently obvious with that lineup. Key matchups at point guard, JoJo White versus Mike Bibby. White, solid defender, Olympic level leadership. Bibby, clutch shooter and the floor general. Slight edge goes to JoJo White. Wings, Pearson Manning versus Jason Terry and Sean Elliott. Pierce, clutch ISO scorer. Manning, all-around dominance. Terry, scoring sport, but not a natural shooting small forward. Elliott, smooth scorer, but less physical. Edge, Kansas. Okay, now it goes further down the line. Front court, Wilt versus Fry. This is where things get unfair. Wilt Chamberlain, arguably the most dominant player ever. Fry, skilled, stretch big, but not built for Wilt. Massive edge to Kansas. Coaching, Bill Self, elite defensive system and half-court execution. Lute Olson, fast-paced, guard-oriented brilliance. Slight edge, even. Stylistic contrast. Bench impact. Lavelle gives Kansas another scoring big. Stoudemire gives Arizona speed and scoring punch. Game script. Arizona's best chances to push tempo, hit threes, and force Wilt into defensive movement. Kansas's game plan, feed Wilt relentlessly. Slow the pace and use size to dominate the boards in the paint. Final score, Kansas 88, Arizona 68. Bottom line, Arizona makes it exciting with guard play and shooting, but this turns into a classic no answer for Wilt situation. Once the game slows down, Kansas controls everything. So we have Kansas winning that game, which we both agreed on.
Correct.
Next game, Georgetown versus Duke. I was interested to see how this played out when I first started it, okay? Now, we know the lineups. We know everything that goes into it. Now, game breakdown. They didn't even bother with the gameplay. They didn't even bother with the X's and O's and the strengths and weaknesses. They just went first half. Clash of styles. Georgetown establishes out dominance early. Patrick Ewing scores inside at will. Alonzo Mourning alters everything defensively. Allen Iverson pushes tempo, forcing turnovers. But Duke responds with spacing and ball movement. Grant Hill becomes the X factor, attacking in transition. Christian Laettner pulls Ewing away from the rim. Jay Williams hit perimeter shots. Halftime score, Georgetown 38, Duke 35. I can see that.
Mm-hmm.
I really can see that.
Mm-hmm.
Second half adjustments. Duke adjustment. Brings in Shane Battier to defend Iverson. Runs offense through Grant Hill as point forward. Spreads the floor to neutralize Georgetown's shot blocking. Georgetown's adjustment. Slows tempo, feeds Ewing in the post, and feeds Alonzo Mourning on the offensive boards. And let Iverson isolate late in the shot clock. Now, moving on. Final minutes of the game. 2 minutes left. Game is tied. Iverson hits a tough pull-up. Georgetown by 2. Hill answers with a coast-to-coast layup to tie it. Laettner hits a mid-range jumper. Duke up by 2. Final possession. Iverson drives. Mourning gets the offensive rebound, kicks it out. Sleepy Floyd misses the jumper. Hill grabs the rebound and gets fouled. Final, Duke 72, Georgetown 68. Player of the game, Grant Hill. Ultimate glue guy performance, controlled tempo while making game-winning plays late. Why Duke wins? Better spacing versus Georgetown packed interior. Versatility. Hill and Laettner combo is deadly. Defensive discipline with Battier late.
Mm-hmm.
With
Played
them
out a
making
lot
that,
like I thought it would.
you know, with them changing that, and I know that your eyes got big when I brought up the idea of, let me see if I can find it. Duke bringing in Shane Battier to defend Iverson.
Very big adjustment.
I can see that happening, and then running the offense through Grant Hill as a point forward.
Yes, sir. Because, they play that pressure defense, but most of their players in certain instances can all, like Battier, Hill, Dawkins, and Williams can all pass, dribble, or shoot for 94 feet. Laettner and Ferry can from basically from the top of the key in. So it's just they'll have a lot of different ways to nullify the Georgetown pressure defense.
Okay, the next game that we have is Michigan State versus Syracuse. And the scouting report for this game, the Magic Johnson factor, 6'9" as a point guard. Washington, he overwhelms Washington physically and dictates tempo. Draymond Green versus Derek Coleman. Draymond's defense and IQ versus Coleman's raw scoring talent is the chess match. Izzo toughness, expect elite rebounding and half-court execution. Syracuse's edge, wing scoring. Carmelo Anthony is the best pure scorer on the floor. Backcourt scoring, Dave Bing gives Syracuse the second elite offensive weapon. Zone defense, classic Boeheim 2-3 zone could disrupt MSU's rhythm. True. Key matchup, Magic versus Pearl. Magic Johnson controls the pace, rebounds, and creates mismatches. Pearl flings flair, but struggles defensively. Advantage Michigan State. Let's see. Carmelo Anthony versus Morris Peterson. Melo likely to get his 25 plus, but Peterson's physical work makes him work for it. Physicality makes him work for it. Derek Coleman versus Draymond Green. Coleman has size and scoring, but Draymond's versatility, switching, passing, help defense impacts everything. Slight edge to Michigan State. Dave Bing versus Steve Smith. Very even. Bing is more explosive. Smith is smoother and efficient. Advantage toss-up. Bench impact. Sean Respert, instant offense, deadly shooter. Lawrence Bowden, consistent scorer. Syracuse's all-time leading scorer. Slight edge Syracuse. Now, moving to the game flow, first half. Syracuse jumps out early behind Carmelo and Bing. Michigan State adjusts. Magic starts dominating in transition. Halftime score, Syracuse 38, Michigan State 35. Second half, Izzo tightens defense. Draymond Green becomes a defensive anchor. Magic exploits mismatches versus Stone with passing and post-ups. Late game, Melo hits tough shots, but Michigan State controls the boards. Final, Michigan State 78, Syracuse 72. Magic, player of the game, 18 points, 12 assists, and 10 rebounds. Triple-double. Completely controls the tempo and breaks the zone.
Yep.
I could definitely see that.
Yeah, but I told you earlier, like, Magic was gonna go inside and he was gonna be a nightmare for Coleman and Cycli, but then he's big enough to hold his own on the boards and all of that. So, they just, and then somebody like him that can pass, dribble, and play make, that's a nightmare when they flash in that free throw area against that 2-3 zone. That's a nightmare,
Yeah. So moving on to the next round. In the opening game of the next round, UCLA versus Michigan State. Michigan State, the lowest seeded team remaining from the first four. They play the top seed, UCLA Bruins. First half, the UCLA machine starts rolling. UCLA comes out running their patented high post offense through Walton, who acts as a passing hub early on. Kareem establishes deep post position, unstoppable skyhook. Goodrich pushes tempo. Wilkes thrives in transition. Michigan State struggles with size early. Draymond Green at center versus Kareem is a mismatch. Halftime score, UCLA 44, Michigan State 36. Pretty close game so far. Second half, Magic takes over. This is where Magic Johnson flips the game, starts attacking in transition, exploits mismatches by pulling Walton and Kareem in the switches, finds shooters like Smith and Peterson. Draymond shifts to a point center role, dragging UCLA's bigs out and disrupting their rhythm. Izzo also brings in Sean Respert for instant offense. Huge spark off the bench. Key turning point. Midway through the second half, Magic drives no-look pass to Peterson for a three. Next possession, steals an entry pass to Kareem. Fast break alley-oop to Kelser. That sequence swings momentum completely. Final minutes, half-court war. UCLA slows it down, feeding Kareem. Skyhook after skyhook keeps them close. Walton facilitates beautifully. But Michigan State counters with switching defense from Draymond. Clutch shooting from Steve Smith. Final score, Michigan State 78, UCLA 74 in an upset. Magic, 22 points, 14 assists, 9 rebounds. Complete control of tempo. Why Michigan State wins? Magic's versatility breaks UCLA's structure. Draymond neutralizes some interior dominance with his high IQ in defense and better perimeter scoring late. This I had a problem with.
Absolutely. Me too.
This I had a problem with.
Magic is that good. Magic is that good, but there's just no feasible way for someone who once, what was it, a 63-game win streak or something like that?
They had a 47-game winning streak that was snapped by Houston.
Yep.
And then they had another 88-game winning streak.
I can't, there's no way I can fathom the combination of Walton, Kareem, and John Wooden. There's just no scenario where they're gonna lose. I'm not gonna pick against a team that what they won 8 in a row or something, or something like that.
10 national championships in 12 years.
I'm just not gonna pick. I'm just not gonna pick against that. And then they both went on, because to me, in my opinion, Kareem is the greatest player that ever lived. Because if you look at it, any level, high school, college, pro, he just dominated it all. And he's
the only thing he don't have is an Olympic medal, and he boycotted that. So
correct. I just can't go against that. I can't.
The next game that we have, Kentucky versus Duke.
Okay.
First half, Kentucky strikes first. Kentucky comes out fast and physical. Anthony Davis dominates defensively, blocking Leitner twice early. Jamal Mashburn burleys his way to 10 quick points. Tony Delk hits 3 threes in rhythm. Duke struggles early with spacing against Davis's rim protection. Halftime score, Kentucky 41, Duke 34. Second half, Duke, once again, makes adjustments. Mike Krzyzewski makes one key move. Slides Grant Hill into more point forward duties. Brings in Shane Battier for defense on Mashburn. This flips the game. Hill starts slicing the defense, transition buckets. Leitner pulls Davis away from the rim with mid-range shooting, and Jay Williams heats up with downhill drives. Final 5 minutes. Score is tied at 68. Dan Issel hits a tough post hook. Hill answers with a coast-to-coast dunk. Delk nails another jumper. Kentucky up 72-71. Final possession, Duke down 1. Ball in Hill's hands, drives and kicks it to Layton at the elbow. Pump fake on Davis, 1 dribble, fade away, ball game. Final score, Duke 73, Kentucky 72. Grant Hill, 22 points, 9 rebounds, and 6 assists. Took over in the second half. Why does Duke win? Versatility with Hill, Battier, defensive flexibility, clutch shot making. Leitner delivers again. Coaching adjustment edge from Coach K.
Yeah, just a common theme. Like I told you when we were formulating the Duke lineup, man. Battier just gives you everything you need, man. In college, in a winning effort, he gives you absolutely everything you need. And then, Grant Hill does as well, but Grant Hill is a bit more offensively, whereas, Battier shades more toward the defensive contribution, and they complement one another perfectly.
So the next game that we have is Kansas versus UConn. And in the first half, UConn comes out hot. Kemba Walker pushes tempo, hitting step backs and slicing to the lane. Ray Allen spaces the floor, forcing Kansas to stretch defensively. Kansas counters with interior dominance. Will Chamberlain overwhelms Okafor early. Size and athleticism mismatch, even versus an elite defense. Paul Pierce hits tough mid-range jump shots and slows the pace. Halftime score, Kansas 41, UConn 38. Second half, UConn makes adjustments. Okafor plays positional defense, limiting Will's easy touches. Rip Hamilton starts running off screens and getting clean looks. Ben Gordon comes off the bench and sparks a scoring run. Kansas responds. Danny Manning becomes the X factor, scoring inside and facilitating. JoJo White controls tempo, limiting turnovers against Kemba Walker. Final 5 minutes, this turns into a classic. Kemba Walker hits a clutch pull-up to tie the game. Pierce answers with a step-back jumper. Ray Allen drills a deep 3. But down the stretch, Kansas continuously feeds Will Chamberlain relentlessly. UConn's double. LaFrenz hits a key mid-range jump shot. Final score, Kansas 78, UConn 74. Wilt Chamberlain, 26 points, 18 rebounds, and 5 blocks. Key takeaways: Kansas's edge, unstoppable interior presence, versatile forwards, and half-court execution. So I got Kansas winning that game. So the final,
a bit more wider than that, but fine.
Yeah. The next game that we have is Indiana versus North Carolina. Okay. And in this game right here, AI said, game breakdown. First half is a clash of styles. Indiana comes out disciplined, motioned offense, backdoor cuts, and half-court precision under Knight. Isaiah Thomas controls the tempo, finding Steve Alford for early threes. North Carolina responds with flow and athleticism. Phil Ford pushes the pace while a young but explosive Michael Jordan starts slashing and finishing above the rim. Halftime score, North Carolina 41, Indiana 38. In the second half, the Stars take over. Indiana leans on toughness inside. Bellamy and Kent Benson push the paint while Scott May scores efficiently in mid-range. But UNC's versatility becomes overwhelming. James Worthy dominates in transition. Sam Perkins stretches the floor. Bob McAdoo off the bench as elite scoring punch. Then comes the turning point. With 1:10 left, tie game at 72, Isaiah hits a tough floater. Indiana up 74-72. On the next possession, Michael Jordan drives baseline, hangs, finishes through contact, and won. UNC takes the lead 75-74. Indiana gets one last shot, offered for 3 just off the rim. Ball game. North Carolina wins 77-74. Michael Jordan, 26 points, 6 rebounds, and plus the game winner.
Okay. I agree with the overall result, but the methodology to get there I kind of have some dissension with, because it seems like here they're kind of kind of what we really worked hard to avoid doing.
Right, exactly. That's what I was thinking.
It seems like they are infusing Chicago Bulls
Michael Jordan, right?
They're infusing Air Jordan into this scenario.
Yeah, right.
So because even in college, when they were in college together, he deferred to James. James was that guy. But nonetheless, I think the right team won. No.
Right.
Yeah.
So we got the Final Four, which is North Carolina, Michigan State, Kansas, and Duke. That's the Final Four according to AI.
Okay.
Now, the first game, the first semifinal, we have North Carolina versus Michigan State. First half, Magic Johnson pushes tempo early, fast breaks and no-look passes. Michigan State goes up 18-10 fairly quick. Michael Jordan takes over midway through the half. Pull-up jumpers, transition dunks. James Worthy thrives in Dean Smith's secondary break. Halftime score, North Carolina 41, Michigan State 37. Second half, Tom Izzo adjusts. More half-court sets, letting Draymond facilitate. Draymond Green acts as a point forward, exploiting mismatches. Sean Westbrook comes off the bench and hits 3 huge threes. Michigan State regains the lead 65-60. Then the final 5 minutes. This is where legends decided. James Worthy goes into killer mode. Steal, dunk. Fadeaway over Steve Smith. Sam Perkins hits a clutch mid-range jumper. Magic Johnson answers with a triple-double type performance. North Carolina up by 1. Magic drive, kick it to Smith. Missed contested jumper, miss. Rebound, Tyler Hansborough. Final score, North Carolina 78. Michigan State 75. Player of the game, James Worthy. 28.6 rebounds, 4 assists, and 2 steals. Why North Carolina wins? James Worthy was the best player on the floor. Better interior defensive presence, elite transition with Worthy. Dean Smith's system maximizes team play. So there you go. James Worthy came in clutch in this one.
Exactly.
Okay, next one, the other semifinal, Kansas versus Duke. This one I thought was very interesting.
Okay.
Here it goes. Style, the clash of styles. Kansas dominant inside-out attack. Everything runs through Wilt, obviously, with Paul Pierce and Danny Manning as elite scorers. Duke, on the other hand, balance and discipline, motioned offense with elite spacing and decision-making. Key matchups. Wilt Chamberlain versus Christian Laettner. This is a swing matchup, and honestly, it's tilted heavily. Wilt is physically overwhelming, likely forcing double teams immediately. Laettner counters with IQ, shooting range, and clutch play. Edge Kansas significantly. Paul Pierce versus Grant Hill. Pierce, pure shooter, thrives in isolation and big moments. Hill, more versatile, defense, rebounding, and playmaking. Edge slightly to Duke due to Hill's all-around impact. JoJo White versus Jay Williams. White, calm, steady, championship pedigree. Williams, explosive scorer and tempo pusher. Toss-up, but Williams may create more offensive bursts. Game situation. First half, Duke starts hot. Ball movement, Hill in transition, Williams attacking. Kansas settles in by pounding it inside to Wilt. Foul trouble starts creeping in for Duke's front court. Halftime score, Kansas 42, Duke 39. Second half, Kansas leans heavily into Wilt. He draws doubles, freeing Pierce for jumpers. Duke counters with small ball stretches, Battier guarding multiple positions. Grant Hill keeps Duke alive with drives and mid-range efficiency. In the final 2 minutes, Kansas is up 3. Duke runs his set for Laettner. Big shot ties the game. Next possession, Wilt scores and the foul. Too strong inside. Final possession, Duke down 2. Williams drives, but Wilt alters the shot. Final score, Kansas 78, Duke 74. Wilt Chamberlain is the player of the game, 28 points, 18 rebounds, and 6 blocks. Why Kansas wins? Wilt simply too dominant in the college setting. Interior scoring and rebounding edge is massive. Pierce provides clutch perimeter shooting.
Okay. I disagree with that one, but you can't I'm not going to argue with it with someone that can surmise that Wilt is going to be too dominant. I'm just you
Yeah,
can't argue with that.
you can't argue with
That's a reasonable assessment. You know,
Now we have the championship game, which is Kansas versus North Carolina. Okay. The game breakdowns, key matchups. JoJo White versus Phil Ford. Elite floor generals, Ford is more of pure distributor, but White brings scoring punch and big game composure. Slight edge Kansas. Pierce versus Jordan. This is the swing matchup. Pierce is clutch and physical, but it's Michael Jordan. Even in college, MJ's defense and late game shot making gives UNC a slight edge. Manning versus Worthy. Manning is more versatile and can carry an offense. Worthy thrives in transition. Slight edge to Kansas in half court, UNC in the open floor. Rafe LaFrance versus Sam Perkins. Perkins tougher defensively and more proven at this level. LaFrance stretches the floor. Slight edge North Carolina and Chamberlain versus Hansborough. This is the biggest mismatch on paper. Wood dominates physically, size, strength, and rebounding are overwhelming. Huge edge Kansas. Game flow. Okay, first half. North Carolina pushes tempo. Ford leads the break. Worthy finishes in transition. Kansas feeds Wilt early. He racks up points and fouls on Hansborough. Score UNC 42, Kansas 39. Second half, Bill Self slows it down. Inside out though, through Wilt and Manning, Kansas starts to control the glass. But then Dean Smith counters by inserting McAdoo for scoring punch that pulls Wilt slightly away from the rim. The final 5 minutes, classic. Pierce hits a jumper. Manning scores in the post. Jordan locks in defensively and forces a turnover. Then Worthy hits a mid-range dagger. North Carolina 78, Kansas 74. Player of the game, James Worthy. Tournament most outstanding player, James Worthy. 24 points, 6 rebounds, and 3 steals. Game-winning shot energy. Why UNC wins? Perimeter defense led by Michael Jordan. Transition scoring by Worthy. Coaching adjustments by Dean Smith. So according to AI, North Carolina would win it.
okay, interesting.
That's what I said.
Interesting.
This was
Yes.
interesting.
Very,
You
it was
know,
very interesting.
now that I tell you that Duke Michigan State game, I don't know about that. I don't know that Magic doing all of that. I mean, I'm sorry, Michigan State and UCLA. Michigan State upsetting UCLA. I mean, I don't know about all that, man. I really that's the only thing.
No,
This was fun. This was really a really cool
lot of fun.
exercise. This is
Lot of
really
fun.
fun, but I just couldn't see as good as Magic Johnson was in college. I didn't think he had enough of that Michigan State crew to do all of that and beat Kareem and Wilt and Keith Wilkes and Gail Goodrich and Ed O'Bannon. I don't think would have had enough to do all that.
Once again, man, you could, um, to me, you could take all of the remaining best players from all of the other squads, not named UCLA, and put together a team. And that UCLA team would still be competitive with them. Still,
Yeah, and that kind of proves it because we both picked UCLA to win it.
you know, like they can have Jordan, Leitner, Magic, Wilt, all in UCLA. I'm not sure. I wouldn't be surprised if UCLA still wins, but they,
Right.
I'm just saying that's how far the gap was to me between UCLA and the next best team to me,
Yeah.
because you got the two best, Walton and Kareem, man, with John Wooden the boot and Silk Wilkes, man, that's just and Gail Goodrich, man, that's just too much. That's
Right.
far too much.
And for people that don't know, Gail Goodrich, in college was a damn good point guard. Just an incredible point guard. He was more of a pass first point guard with him and Walt Hazard in the backcourt at UCLA and Keith Erickson in the front court and Larry Farmer wasn't there yet. But But yeah, that team, the mid '60s UCLA Bruins before Kareem got there, that won back to back in '64 and '65. That was spearheaded by Gil Goodrich, who of course became one of the greatest point guards in the history of the NBA. Of course, I mean, but it's unfortunate that a lot of people don't really talk that much about him. But still, just an outstanding point guard in his own right.
Correct. And as great as Magic was, it's like this the AI simulation kind of made him out to be a basketball version of Optimus Prime almost. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, you're
because
right.
you look in, like, I'm talking Generation One Transformers. You look at the comparative squads between Autobots and the Decepticons. You
Yeah,
know, the Decepticons had everybody. Right? It was like,
right.
they had the Autobots had Prime, Skyfire was okay, and the Dinobots, that was it. Meanwhile, the Decepticons had Megatron, Soundwave, including his cassettes, Laserbeak,
Yeah,
Ravage, all of them.
right.
Shockwave. They had Starscream, the three Seekers, Starscream,
Yeah,
Thundercracker, and Skywarp. Then they had the Constructicons who formed Devastator. They had the
yeah,
Combaticons who formed Bruticus. Then they
yeah,
had the Stunticons who formed Minosaur. It just,
yeah.
Prime. You remember
I'm
that
surprised
86
you
movie?
remember all of that because I used to be a Transformers head myself. I don't remember. I remember the names, but you asked me to name them. I couldn't name them now. Could not name them now.
Well,
You
I,
know.
I, I still watch it. I've been watching it 30 years, 40 years, man. I still
Hey,
watch it.
I can't. I can't. I look. Every time Star Wars comes on TV, I watch it. So I can't. Either if it's you're listening, you're probably talking to the only person who likes Star Wars and Star Trek equally.
Correct.
So but I'm impressed by that, bro. I really am.
But you remember, I don't know if you ever saw the 87 cartoon movie, the best Transformer movie
Of
out
course.
there.
Oh, yeah,
You know,
absolutely. I went to the
you
movies
know,
and watched it.
Megatron had intercepted the Autobot jet leaving one of Cybertron's moons to
Yeah.
try to pick up energon cubes from
Uh-huh.
Autobot City so they could power an assault so the Autobots could regain control of Cybertron. But Megatron intercepted it, and that's when he blew Ironhead's head off and
Yeah.
all of that. And then they were pounding Autobot City because they got past the early detection systems. And right
Right.
when they were about to overtake Autobot City, what's the dude? Blaster. He was
Yeah.
formed
The radio,
the
right?
radio, right, and sent an emergency SOS to Prime and hoped that he got it, but he got
Right.
it, and that's when Prime got off the ship, and you remember he was driving and then transformed, jumped in there and shot them all. He beat
Yeah.
every last one of them, but then Hot Rod caused him to get killed, and that's
Right.
kind of what they've done the Magic in this scenario. Like,
Okay.
man, you're not. I know how great he is, but man, come on, man. Come on. And he's good enough. I think he's
Yeah,
a great
yeah.
enough player to elevate anyone to
I mean, we've
be
seen that
competitive.
time and time again, of course, in the NBA.
Correct.
Time and
But
time again, he
Walton-
did that in the NBA.
But
But
Walton and Kareem and Silk Wilkes and Wooden, no,
that's no.
No.
That's a tough ask.
No.
That is a tough ask.
he'd have
because-
it competitive, which
Yeah.
speaks alone how great he was and how
Right.
his ability to raise those around him. But that's just that. I just think that's just a mountain too far high to overcome. Me personally.
Okay,
know.
so to quickly recap, we both have UCLA winning this tournament, but AI thinks differently and says that North Carolina would defeat Kansas in the tournament's championship game. So who are we to argue? But this is what we do here on the Historically Speaking Sports. But I really appreciate, Chuck, you coming on once again to talk to us about, talk shop about college basketball. Really appreciate another great episode by you, man. I really appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Anytime, man. I love being a part of the Historically Speaking sports podcast family, man. Just I've enjoyed my time here, and just we're gonna keep it rolling, man.
Yeah, we're gonna keep it definitely rolling. We'll be back in a couple weeks. We're talking
Yes,
about
sir.
something else, and we're gonna close up this episode right here. You're listening to the Historically Speaking Sports podcast right here on the Sports History Network. That concludes this edition of the Historically Speaking Sports Podcast. Thank you once again for listening. This podcast comes to you from the Bill King Memorial Studio in the sports wing of TM4 Enterprises, located in suburban Atlanta in the shadow of Stone Mountain. Once again, don't forget to like and subscribe to the show to get new episodes whenever they are released. And always, please tell people about us. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your coworkers, tell your neighbors. Hell, tell a passerby on the street if you think that they like sports history. And once again, if you want to contact the show, you can email us at historically.speaking.sports@gmail.com. And once again, thank you so very much for listening. Talk to you soon.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.